Hi Otto, another feedback class today. So we're on feedback number 10 and I think we've just done open up. We often talk about opportunities opening up somewhere. So it's very often when something positive suddenly appears. I can't remember if we did open up in the last one or not, so let's do it again. We say a lot of opportunities are opening up in China. It's usually when something positive, something good, something that you're looking forward to makes itself available. It collocates very well with opportunities anyway. Opportunities open up. Next one is nag, which we already know is a synonym of keep on at someone about something, be on at someone about something, go on at someone about something. So you can say, she keeps on at me to fix the car, if your wife's nagging you to fix the car. Or he went on at me about wasting money. Yeah, not for. He went on at me about wasting my money. Not for. I've made a mistake there in the feedback. He went on at me about wasting money. Go on at someone about something. And to be going on about, yeah, this is another one. If you say, I can't understand what he's going on about or what he's on about, it means I can't understand what he's talking about. So it could be used like that as well, to be on about something, to be talking about something. But yeah, generally it's often used for nag or criticize. Okay, we're on to feedback number 10, feedback number 11 now. And we start with the word crop up, which is a word which I really like. Same as come up, appear, suddenly. And so the same phrasal verbs crop up in every class because, of course, we're repeating them. And we go round in circles and we repeat lots of the old ones again. And when we repeat them, they crop up. But all sorts of topics can crop up in class. All sorts of vocabulary can crop up. And yeah, you can use this in all sorts of ways, this phrasal verb, just to mean appear suddenly and in some ways unexpectedly. Okay, if you own up to something, you admit it. So own up to something is to admit a mistake or an error, or you could admit a crime. You can own up to one of your sins or one of your crimes. So own up to is very common. Then we've got be on about, go on about, keep on about. I've gone on about these phrasal verbs so many times. They've cropped up in so many lessons. I think you're very familiar with those particular phrasal verbs. Okay, if you pin someone down, you hold them down. You push them on the floor and hold them down. So when the burglar came here, I remember at one moment pinning him down, but then feeling a bit silly because I'd lost control of myself. I got carried away and I decided it was time to get off of him and wait for the police to arrive. So have it out with someone. When the burglar came, I had it out with the burglar. I started arguing with him. To have it out with someone is to argue with someone about some particular grievance or grudge or something which has been annoying you. So my wife recently had it out with the boss. Well, the boss had it out with her, really. He was angry that she had left early, but she'd left early because she didn't like that his dog came in and went to toilet in the middle of the office and they didn't clean it up, and she didn't like working next to this, and so she decided to go home early, and then the boss had it out with her. I don't think she'll work there for much longer, being honest. She's constantly arguing with the boss. And so, yeah, I think that she'll actually decide to resign soon. I was trying to think of a good phrasal verb for quit. She'll jack in her job. She'll pack it in soon. There's a good one for resign, quit. I think she'll pack it in soon. Okay, if you wind someone up, this wind up can mean a few things. It can mean end up. There's the first one. If there's no object, I wound up in, it's like that, wind up in, like end up in, exactly the same as end up in. I wound up in a difficult situation. I ended up in a difficult situation. So a little bit different, really, from wind someone up. Very different from wind someone up. Wind up in means end up in, finish up in. So if you wind someone up, you annoy them, you irritate them, you try to get on their nerves, perhaps to make fun of them, perhaps to, laugh at them. And so little children always wind each other up. Michael is always being wound up by his sister. But if you wind something up, if you wind up the business, then it means you finish the business and you make sure that all of the all the documents have been signed so that the business has been shut down. It's been closed down. So you can wind up the business, but you could even wind up the lesson with a test. So it is possible to use it like that. It's much rarer, wind up the lesson. But it is possible to say we wound up with a test. Yeah, we finished off with a test. Yeah, and that's an example number 3. I started winding up the talk after an hour of speaking. Exactly the same as wrapping up then. Wrap up the lesson with a test, wind up the lesson with a test. So it can mean to finish as well as to annoy. Okay, next word is sole trader. This is a term for self-employed people, and it's micro businesses. It's people that work all on their own. They don't have a partnership. Yeah, that would be a different type of business. But when somebody's working all on their own, they're a sole trader. So I'm a sole trader, and I was a sole trader in Moscow as well. Next phrase is very good, very common. To not let someone get a word in edgeways. When I went up to visit the school for parents' evening, I felt like Polly's teacher didn't let me get a word in edgeways. It's quite common for teachers to be a little bit self-obsessed, and I think it's because they're the main guy or lady in the class. They've got 30 sets of eyes, 60 eyes in total, but 30 pairs of eyes focused on them all day, every day at work, and I think they can let power go to their head and become a little bit self-obsessed, like they're the only one with something important to say. And when we went to the parents' evening, he didn't let me get a word in edgeways. He was talking and talking and talking, and whenever I tried to make a comment, he either didn't hear, I mean there were a few times where he just didn't hear and he carried on talking, or he gave me a quick response back and then started talking about himself again. So at the end of the conversation, I knew where he used to work, I knew how his own children had done in different exams, but I didn't know much about my daughter. I didn't walk away extremely impressed. I'm very pleased with him because he focuses on maths, and I think that Paulina needs to focus on maths. So I'm not in a mood with him. I'm actually quite pleased with him, but he is a typical self-obsessed teacher. He thinks of himself as something special because he's used to being the centre of attention. He has to be the centre of attention. It's very common among teachers, this particular character trait of being a little bit self-obsessed and not letting others get a word in edgeways. Perhaps I also suffer from this problem. I hope not. I don't usually have so many people watching me, but I suppose on my YouTube channel I do, and so perhaps I also let power go to my head and think of myself as more important than everybody else, but I hope not. Okay, if you drop off or doze off in class, you have a little sleep, you have a little nap. You can say have a nap as well. Have 40 winks would be a good idiomatic expression. If you have 40 winks, you drop off, you doze off, you have a nap. So that's another good phrasal verb. If you cave in to demands, that means you back down to demands. You yield to demands. You give in to demands. Give in to is another one. So you could say something like this: I've been on at my mum to buy me a new bike, and now she has caved in. She's said okay, she's given in, she's backed down and said okay, I'll buy you the bike. Okay, if you give in to someone, you yield to their demands, but if you give up something, you relinquish, you surrender. So you can give up your weapons, but you can also just give up. Yeah, you can say that the army surrendered, the army gave up. They waved the white flag and put their hands up and they gave up. So give up can mean surrender, but it can also mean relinquish. When you give up an object, you give up your weapons. Okay, if something goes down, it happens. We can even say what's going down at your end. I can even say that on the phone. Yeah, what's going down at your end, and it means what's happening in your life? What's going down? And go down is very common for happen. We can say, what went down in the town centre last night? What happened in the town centre last night? Yeah, it just means what happened. So if something goes down, it takes place, it occurs, it happens. And if somebody says what's going down, it means what's happening, what's occurring, what's taking place. Now, go by is an interesting phrasal verb, because we can say, going by experience, he'll be late. And it means, well, if we judge the experiences we have had of this guy, if we look at past experience, if we follow in accordance with his past actions, he'll be late. And so you can use this go by in a lot of different ways. You can also use it for to be called. If I say I go by the name of Mr. Skype Lessons on YouTube, it means that's the name that people refer to me with on YouTube. So you can go by a name, but also it means in accordance with. So if I say something like I don't go by that explanation, it means I don't really agree with that explanation. I feel like I ought to give you some more for go by, because it is a very common phrasal verb. You can also say time goes by the way. So time goes by, it means that time has passed by. And you can also say he went by the church, meaning he walked past the church. You can say don't let an opportunity pass by. Don't let an opportunity go by without taking it with both hands. Yeah. So when opportunities open up, you ought not to let them pass you by. But you can also say, yeah, I can't see many on the Cambridge Dictionary for going by experience. That example, going by experience. Let's see what Macmillan have got. Yeah, time passes by. To accept what someone or something says when you are deciding what to do or think, to go by something. So look at these examples. Going by what Tim said, we should be there by mid-afternoon. So according to what Tim said. Here it really does mean according to. And if you go by the book, you obey the rules in the book. You act in accordance with the rules in the book. So police officers protect themselves from criticism by going by the book. But yeah, I don't think that's necessarily true, but they always obey the law. They go by the book. Let's do things by the book. And it can also mean to base an opinion on something. So it's never very wise to go by appearances. And it means to size people up on their appearance. Yeah, to size someone up on their appearance, to judge them on their appearance. So it's not wise to go by appearances. So to base your decisions in accordance with appearances. So yeah, that's an interesting one, go by. We'll try and use that a little bit more often in class, because I don't think I do often use it, but it's a good one, and you very often see it as a gerund. Going by blah blah blah, we ought to, yeah, going by what Tim said, going by the theory of general relativity, the law of gravity, or gravity is a fictional force. Yeah, I'm sure as an engineer you're aware of this. Going by the theory of relativity, gravity is a fictional force, it's not real. Okay, let's come on to the next one. To stand for. It means to support an idea, an ideology. So if you say I stand for equal rights, it means I support equal rights. But if you say I stand for the right of every American to bear arms, it means I support that idea. I'm not against it, I'm in favour of it. But there is a second meaning of stand for, which means tolerate, so put up with. If you say I won't stand for behaviour like that, it means I won't put up with behaviour like that. I won't bear it. I won't stand for it. It's like I can't stand behaviour like that. I won't stand for behaviour like that. So it can also mean put up with, tolerate, deal with, or have to cope with something, and you're saying I won't stand for it. It's not acceptable, that kind of behaviour. Okay, if you want to urge someone to do something, you can egg them on. And I think this is very often used for naughty behaviour. If one child is egging on another child in a class to do something naughty, maybe throw a piece of paper at the teacher, that child is putting him up to it. Yeah, he's provoking him to do it. So you could say he's egging him on. You could also say he put him up to it. He egged him on. He provoked him. Okay, so to put someone up to something is similar to egg someone on, to urge someone to do something. Okay, the next one is to fritter away. Very similar to while away. So if you fritter away something, you spend it badly, you waste it. That's the word, waste it. If you fritter away several hours on a Sunday afternoon, you waste them doing something relaxing, but not something serious, not something that you ought to be doing. And you can also say he whiled away the hours. But while away doesn't work with money. Fritter away you can use with money. He frittered away his inheritance. So fritter away you could use with time or money, and it would mean waste. While away is a little bit different, but it's connected. While away, I would say that it's more, it's less concerned with waste, because it sounds to me like you are spending the time lazily, but in an enjoyable way. So it's more positive to while away. Let me just check that one. I'll put while away and see what Cambridge come up with. While something away. To spend time in a relaxed way because you have nothing to do, or you're waiting for something else to happen, so you're killing time. So while away is more like relax and kill some time. Fritter away is more like waste your time, which you should have spent in a better way. Yeah, when you fritter away something, it's negative. When you while away the hours, it's positive. And that's why you can't while away money, because it doesn't mean waste. Fritter away, you can fritter away your inheritance. You can fritter away your pocket money if you're a kid. And so you can fritter away time or money. But while away is only for time, and it means to spend time in a relaxed way. It's actually quite positive. So when I say, how do you while away the hours on a Sunday afternoon, it means how do you enjoy them in a relaxed way. But if I say, how did you fritter away the hours yesterday or on the last Sunday, you need to tell me something negative, something that you did which was a complete waste of time. While away would be positive, something you enjoyed. Maybe you whiled away the hours with Mindhunter, but maybe, you know, obviously you're learning English then, and so it's quite positive. But if you spent the whole day on Facebook, yeah, you frittered away the hours of the Sunday on social media. Okay, next one is to lay someone off. Lay someone off means make someone redundant. It means not sack or fire, because sack or fire, it sounds like you've done something wrong. Yeah, they've always done something wrong if you sack or fire someone. Oh, I see. I forgot some other. I think I forgot one on the last thing, but anyway, if you sack or fire someone, yeah, you actually get rid of them, and it's because they've done something wrong. But if you lay someone off, it means the company is downsizing. You're cutting down on staff, and so you have to let someone go. You have to lay someone off. So there's a few ways you can say that. Now, I think I missed to scold or reprimand or tell off on feedback 10, so I'll quickly do that one. If you scold, reprimand or reproach someone, they are all very formal words for tell someone off. But tell off sounds very childish because it's usually for schools. Teachers tell the children off. You could say the boss gave me a ticking off. It's another way of saying that somebody told you off. But I have to say that scold, reprimand and reproach all sound incredibly formal to me, and so they are perhaps not always appropriate in all situations. Okay, we're moving forward fairly quickly. I don't want to go too fast. I do try to slow down and make sure I get all the subtle nuances that are there. But we're on to feedback 12 now. And the very first word is empirical. I think you'll know this word because I've got a sneaking suspicion that it is a Latin word. Empirical means based on physical reality. science, it ought to proceed by experiment. So it proceeds by testing the theories in the empirical world with empirical results, with empirical data, and that means data from real experiments showing real results. And so I think it's the strength of science that it actually bases its arguments on empirical research, and unfortunately it doesn't always do this. I think very often in the science media you can find a lot of strange magazines like New Scientist in England, and I remember reading these magazines as a kid when I was about 18. I really enjoyed science, and I think it's full of science fiction. It's not actually based on empirical research at all. It's more based on things which will startle and shock and surprise, like all media. They want to get you excited, but they don't actually want to tell you what's going on in the world of science. And so I think a lot of modern articles in the science media which popularise science are not empirical at all. I think that concepts like the Big Bang, black holes, dark energy, dark matter, they're not empirical at all. There's nothing empirical about any of those ideas because you can't actually test these ideas. They're not physical things. Black holes aren't physical things. Big bangs aren't physical things. They're theoretical things, but whether they've actually existed or not is another question. Okay, next we have the very subtle difference between day to day and day by day, and it is a very subtle difference. Day to day is more like an adjective, which is the same as every day. And by the way, I've spelt that adjective wrong on my sheet because every day as an adjective should have no space between the two words. Every day as two words means every day, but every day as one word means the adjective. So you could say in everyday English and it would be one word because it's functioning as an adjective and modifying English. So in day-to-day English is perfect as well, it's fine. Day-to-day means every day as an adjective. Day by day means day after day. It means when the days are when you want to refer to the fact that the days are coming progressively, consecutively. So if you want to say my English is getting better day by day, that would be correct, not day to day, because day to day is an adjective. Day by day is the one you're looking for if you want to say my English is getting better day by day, or day by day I'm getting more depressed, or day by day I watch more and more shows in English. Yeah, from day to day, basically. Day by day, it means from one day to the next. Okay, I hope that's clear. To live on means to survive on. So if you say I lived solely on fruit and berries while at university, it means that you got by on solely fruit and berries. So live on is very similar to get by on, or I think there was another one, or to survive on, or you could even say I fed on, but it sounds a little bit strange for humans. For other animals you do often say the gorilla feeds on, or the panda feeds on bamboo, and so it lives on bamboo, yeah, it gets by on bamboo. So they're all fairly similar, although there are subtle differences. Now if you steal away, you sneak away, you creep away. It means you leave without anybody noticing. So sneak away, creep away, tiptoe away, steal away, all of those would be acceptable if you tried to leave without anybody noticing. And of course there are situations where you might want to do that. Personally, I hate long goodbyes, and it's why I always steal away. And in Russia they have this idiom or saying that Englishmen leave without saying goodbye. For me, it's absolutely true. I always try and leave without saying goodbye. I hate long goodbyes, I really do. And it's because I know I'll see that person again. But it is considered rude here as well to just go without saying goodbye. And I suppose I'd find it easier if it was just see you later and then go. But it usually never is, yeah? Usually it's see you later, kiss, 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 hug, 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 and then another conversation, and another kiss, and then another hug, and then another conversation. And, it winds me up. It drives me mad. I just want to go. And so sometimes I steal away to avoid that long goodbye. Okay, if you spirit someone away, or something away, it means you take that person or that thing away without anybody noticing. So it's still without noticing again, this away. It's like you vanish. You make that object or person vanish without anybody noticing. And that's really quite common. So kidnappers try and spirit away their victims, yeah? I mean, they have to. But whisk someone away is connected, but it's usually used for romance. In fact, it's always used for romance. I can't think many times when it's not. If you whisk someone away, I suppose the boss could whisk his team away on a holiday, and so it doesn't have to be for romance, but the idea is that it's unexpected, and you suddenly take that person or group away on a long holiday or on a long trip, somewhere away from their usual routine, from what they're usually doing, from their work, from their home, from their typical day-to-day life. So yeah, if you whisk someone away, you take them away suddenly, very often because you're in love with them, but it could just be, I suppose, that you really like them, and you take them on holiday. Okay, if you enter into an agreement, then you start that agreement, and it works very well with agreement enter into. Of course, you can enter into a room. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's quite formal. But you could also enter into a discussion. You could also enter into an arms race. And yeah, enter into an agreement, enter into a discussion, enter into a contract maybe, something like that. And so it just means to start, yeah, to start this agreement or start this discussion. Okay, the onset of something is the start of something. And remember that we talk about the onset of seasons, the onset of winter, but we also talk about the onset of disease. The onset of this disease is characterized by blah, blah, blah. Remember that the phrasal verb of this phrasal verb noun is actually set in. Winter sets in, yeah, in October or November or whenever. Different for you, obviously, because you're in the southern hemisphere. But also disease can set in. So really, onset and set in are related, even though they sound like they're different phrasal verbs. They've got the same meaning. One's the noun and one's the verb. So winter sets in, disease is set in, but you say the onset of a disease or the onset of winter. Okay, to read up on is very similar to, I keep trying to say similar as, but that's not right. It's very similar to bone up on or to brush up on. Yeah, if you brush up on your grammar, you're trying to improve your grammar. If you bone up on your Newtonian mechanics, this is what I want to bone up on. I think it's a fascinating subject, especially for cosmology. And if you bone up on it, you try and find some websites with information about it, and you read up on all the facts, yeah? So read up on, it means revise something. Bone up on means revise something. Brush up on means revise something. So these up on verbs, these three up on verbs, and there are probably a few more, cram up on is also possible. Cramming, yeah, cramming up on. They all mean revise, repeat some material in order to improve. Maybe for a test, but maybe not. You know, I'm boning up on Newtonian mechanics for fun. And I just do it using Wikipedia, so I'm not doing a lot of heavy mathematics as part of the mechanics, and I should do really, because I understand that mathematics is the language of mechanics and engineering, as I'm sure you're aware. Okay, next one. To get into or to get stuck into means to suddenly start studying some kind of topic which you would like to brush up on. So if you get stuck into a topic, it sounds like you're enjoying it as well, that you're really applying yourself. You've made a lot of effort with this topic. You've been reading up on it for days and you really got stuck into the topic. So it's quite positive. I mean, if you're talking about education, I mean, if you're talking about study, something like that, you get stuck into a topic, it's really very positive. But remember, you can also get into hobbies or pastimes. You know, you can get into stamp collecting, you can get into carpentry, you could get into any kind of hobby. It doesn't have to be an academic topic that you get stuck into. Okay, if you talk about your gear, it very often means your stuff, your possessions, your belongings, whatever it is you have on you. And so you might need to put your gear in the boot of your car. You might need to put your stuff in the trunk. Remember, in America they call it the trunk. In Britain we call it the boot. Okay, if you turn someone in, you inform on them. You hand that person over to the authorities, or turn that person over to the authorities. You grass them up. You rat on them. You snitch on them. We have loads of phrasal verbs for this. You can grass someone up, and you can also grass on someone. So there are loads and loads of phrasal verbs which mean betray your acquaintance, because you might be a friend, you might not. Usually not, yeah, if you're betraying them. And so you turn them in, you hand them over to the authorities. Okay, the next one's an adjective, off-putting, and it's from put off. And if the kids are putting you off your driving, they're distracting you. So their behaviour is off-putting. It's distracting. Off-putting always means distracting. But put someone off, it could mean distract. But if you put a lesson off, it could mean delay the lesson. Let's put the lesson off until next Monday, something like that. But there is another meaning of put off. I'm going to have to quickly check it. Put off. So delay, distract. And yeah, it can also mean to stop you liking something. So if you say the smell coming from the bathroom has put me off my food, it doesn't mean distract, it doesn't mean delay, it means it's stopped you from liking, it's prevented you from liking the food, it's stops you from enjoying something. So it could mean not just distract, but actually stop you from enjoying something. You might say something like this: what you've told me about that club has put me off from going. Maybe a friend told you some negative, they made some scathing comments, some barbed comments about this club. They've said that it's an awful place, there's not very nice customers in the club either, not very nice people inside. And so they have they have given you lots of bad information about the club, and it's put you off going to the nightclub. Yeah, so it's stopped you from going, it's prevented you from going, because now you've changed your mind and you've thought it's not perhaps such a good idea. So it can be used like that as well, to put someone off. Okay, next one is to knock something down, to tear something down. If you knock down a block of flats, you demolish it, and if you tear down a house, you demolish it. So it's another way of saying to completely demolish a building. Okay, look, to have 40 winks is on the feedbacks. We've done an astonishing amount of vocabulary. To have 40 winks, it means to doze off, to drop off, to nod off, yeah, to fall asleep. That's all, to fall asleep. So a good little idiom there. Okay, we're moving on to feedback number 13, but we're not going to rush. We're going to go nice and slowly. Okay, if you cock something up, sounds a little bit rude, of course, but this word, cock, which can be rude, doesn't have to be. It is the name of a male hen, yeah? A cock. A cockerel would be a longer word, but we just call it a cock. And if you watch Elementary, in one of those episodes, Sherlock is trying to wean two cocks off their aggressive tendencies, and that's a good phrasal verb, wean from, in fact. He was trying to wean them from their aggressive tendencies. And when you wean somebody off, oh no, they've got it off here, wean cocaine addicts off their drug. It means to try and get someone used to try to make them get used to not having something which they are already used to having. And to wean a small child means to bring up a child, and to wean someone off something, it means to try to get them to abandon their bad habit. So I plan on using an electronic cigarette very soon. I'm buying one at the moment in order to wean me off the nicotine. Well, it's not going to wean me off the nicotine because there's nicotine inside the electronic cigarette, but it will wean me off the cigarettes. It will wean me off smoking, I hope. And so that would be to wean somebody off. Anyway, that one was from elementary, from years ago. But in elementary, yeah, Sherlock wanted to wean the two cocks off their aggressive tendencies. He wanted to try and get them used to being more calmer. Yeah, he wanted them to calm down, and so that they wouldn't be so aggressive and lash out at and hit out at everybody around them. But anyway, a cock up is a mistake. If something is a cock up, it happened by error. And so there was a very famous cock up that the BBC made, and they said it's a cock up, it's not a conspiracy, because a lot of people said it was a conspiracy. I think this was concerning the Twin Towers. There was a small piece of footage which showed that the BBC had said that the building had fallen down before it fell down. And a lot of people said, oh, it's a conspiracy. How did the BBC know that the building was going to fall down, that the building was going to come down? And the conspiracy theorists said that the building had been knocked down, the building had been torn down, it must have been demolished. But the BBC said, no, it's just a simple mistake. The person thought that the building had already fallen down, but it hadn't. And it was just a complete cock-up. And by coincidence, the building did actually fall down a few minutes later. And so that was that particular scandal. Okay, if you run into debt, or if you run into hurdles, or if you run into difficulties, it means you have problems. And that's a good point. When you run into something, it's quite often something negative if it's a thing. If you run into a person, you just bump into them by chance. But if you run into a thing, it means come across, but I think it's very often used with negative things, much more than positive things. If it's positive, I would use come across. I came across a beautiful gold watch in the market, but I wouldn't say ran into. I ran across, that would be okay. I ran across a beautiful gold watch. But you can run into debt, you can run into hurdles, you can run into hurdles, and you can run into difficulties or problems. So that's how we use run into. Okay, we've got brush up on and bone up on. Just did that about 10 minutes ago. It's when you want to revise a school subject, when you want to repeat some kind of information so that you improve, so that your knowledge is brought up to scratch. Yeah. No, that doesn't work, sorry, that expression, but so that your knowledge is improved and it gets back to a previous level. You get it back to where it was in the past. Okay, if you break up with someone, you split up with someone, it means end a romantic relationship, and it is only for romantic relationships. If you break up with a friend, don't say break up, say fall out with. I fell out with him. And if later on you get back together with a friend or a lover, you make up. You make up with that friend, or you make up with that lover. So break up with, split up with for romance, fall out with for friends, and make up with for everybody. Okay, next one. We've got marriages, negotiations and relations can break down. If you say our marriage broke down, it means it stopped. If you say relations between these two countries have broken down, it means they've become very poor. The relations have soured. They've become very sour. And so at the moment, relations between America and Russia have broken down. They're not going very well. They're in very bad shape. But yeah, marriages can break down, the engagement can break down, negotiations can break down, and it means that they're not going well. But please remember that you break off the marriage. You break off the engagement. So break off is very similar to break down, but not grammatically. In meaning it's similar, but grammatically it's used differently. You say the relations or marriage broke down, it's intransitive, it doesn't have an object. But when you break something off, it must have an object. It's transitive, it's a transitive verb, and you say he called off the engagement. He broke off the engagement. So yeah, you can say called off or broke off. He called off the engagement. Yeah, he cancelled it. He broke off the engagement. He called off the wedding. That would be okay as well, but he broke off the marriage. Yeah, so you can break off an engagement or a relationship, but the relationship breaks down. Okay, I hope that's clear. If it isn't, bring it up in the next class and we will go over it. If you keel over or double over, we did very recently as well. If you keel over, it's because you're in pain. You could keel over from laughter. I think you could, and I think some authors would use it like that, because laughter can almost be painful when you're really, really laughing. It can be really painful. And so because of that, I would say that keel over and double over, both of them you could use in either situation. However, keel over is much more common for pain, and double over is much more common for laughter. And I think there is that difference. But I don't see anything wrong with saying he doubled over in excruciating pain. It's correct. And the same with he keeled over in fits of laughter. It's correct. Okay, to be at the end of your tether, it means to be at the end of your patience. If you're at the end of your tether, it's an idiom, and it means you have no more patience left. You have run out of patience. Your patience has worn thin, to take a good expression from Mindhunter. In the very first episode, the policeman says, our patience is wearing thin. It means we are running out of patience. We are at the end of our tether. We need to get those hostages out, and we need to arrest you. And so, yeah, there's some excellent examples in these TV shows. Please keep watching them. And yeah, I've done some recent episodes for Mindhunter, and it just gets better and better for repeating these phrasal verbs. Okay, to catch up with someone, it very often is used physically, yeah, when you're chasing someone, when you're running after someone, when you're going after someone or coming after someone. If you eventually reach that person, you catch up with them. But it can be used metaphorically. One student missed 3 weeks and now they have to catch up with the rest of the class. Yeah, it's the same thing, but metaphorically. And it can also mean when you haven't seen an old friend for years, you might say, oh, it would be great to meet on Monday and catch up with you. And what it means is catch up on all the old news, catch up on what's happened. It means catch up on any changes which have happened in both of your lives. So you catch up with someone also when you see an old friend for the first time in ages, and you go over all the information, all of the different things that have happened, all of the news. When you share your news, you catch up with someone. Okay? And so very common for catch up with, that one as well. Okay. If something lands you in the shit, which is the next one, it gets you in trouble. And you can land up in something as well, meaning end up in, or we had another one a few minutes ago and I've forgotten it, end up in, wind up in. You can wind up in the shit, you can land up in the shit, and you can end up in the shit. But you can also land someone in the shit. You can't wind someone in the shit though, or end someone in the shit. Those two are not possible. But if you land someone in the shit, what you do is you put them in a really difficult position. It doesn't have to be the shit either. You could land someone in, but it is normally land someone in the shit. But yeah, if you land someone in the shit, you put them in the shit. Something you've said, maybe you've blurted something out and it's landed them in the shit. Maybe you've I had a party recently and one of my friends had told his wife that we had all gone out to the strip club, and this girl, Jess, she blurted out that we had all been in the strip club when my wife was in the room. Now, fortunately, my wife never gets jealous, it seems to me, or very rarely. I've only seen her get jealous once when I was actually chatting to an old girlfriend in the pub, and it was a particularly pretty ex-girlfriend, not some of the uglier ones who I've been out with, and I could see that she was getting jealous then. But in this situation, she certainly wasn't, and she doesn't about stuff like that. She seems to understand that, yeah, guys go to strip clubs and that it's nothing to be concerned with. But anyway, my friend was worried that he had landed me in the shit, that he had landed me in some kind of problem. So yeah, it is possible to land someone in, but it's normally used with the shit. But related to land up in, end up in, wind up in, for sure. Okay, if you bear up, you hold up. How is he bearing up? How is he holding up? It means how is he doing since that terrible event? It could be an emotional event, like he's broken up with his girlfriend. And then you still might say, how is he holding up since he broke up with his girlfriend? How is he bearing up? But it could be physical as well. Maybe he's caught some kind of throat infection. I caught a throat infection a few days ago, and I think I'm bearing up pretty well. I'm using the standard medicine. Always the best medicine, and I always keep it at a close distance from my place of work. I find that it's the best medicine around, and it certainly helps for any kind of throat problems. And I drink a lot of green tea with lemon as well. That helps. But please don't think I'm an alcoholic just because I've got a bottle down there. You can see that it's quite full anyway, so I haven't had a lot of it. But still, I still believe that helps me bear up better than anything the doctor could give me, for sure. Okay, next one, to be riddled with. We love this phrasal verb because it's very specific. To be riddled with disease, bullets, holes, mistakes. It's got to be something negative if you're riddled with it. And so, yeah, you could say the corpse was riddled with bullets, but you could also say the essay was riddled with grammatical errors. So it can be used in a few different ways, but it's always negative, and it's when something is bursting with something negative. Okay, remember that bursting with and brimming with enthusiasm for positive, yeah, brimming with excitement. But the place was bursting with tourists. Crawling with tourists, to mean full of, is also a good one. The city was crawling with tourists. Okay, next one, to resign yourself to. What a good expression. If you resign yourself to something, you give up, basically. You surrender. You say, okay, there's nothing else that can be done. I have to do this. I resign myself to my fate. And that's the idea. You're resigning yourself to your fate, to your destiny. There's nothing you can do to stop it. You can keep trying to stop it, but you're fighting the inevitable. And because you finally realize that you're fighting the inevitable, in the end you acquiesce. You say, okay, I resign myself to my fate. I'm going to have to do this. So, for example, maybe, I mean, in our situation, I think my wife, I told you, she's thinking about packing in her job again. And if she does this, I'll have to resign myself to working a little bit harder. I'll have to resign myself to some extra classes because I have no choice. And you know, it's just fate, destiny. It's ridiculous to fight against it, to fight back. It won't get me anywhere. I just have to resign myself to a little bit of extra work. So when you resign yourself to something, you surrender and acquiesce and say, okay, I have to do it. There's nothing I can do. So the children have to resign themselves to going to school every day. There's nothing they can do about it. It's their fate. And when you resign yourself to something, it sounds like you've been battling against it for some time, but in the end you acquiesce. Okay, so the school example isn't the best one because they never battled against that. What did they battle against? Okay, well, my son hasn't quite done this, but I'm hoping that he will resign himself to practicing the guitar most nights because he's got guitar lessons at the moment and he doesn't seem to enjoy them that much. I'm thinking of stopping them, just packing it in, basically. But I want him to resign himself to playing the guitar every night so that he can improve. It's the only way to get better, to practice. Anyway, I don't think he will, and I think I've resigned myself to the fact that he's not going to ever become a guitarist. Okay, shortcomings or weaknesses are your negative character traits. Your shortcomings are blemishes on your personality. So my example was he makes up for his shortcomings by being incredibly loyal. I'm probably talking about one of my friends here who I'm probably talking about Ben, I think, and I think he has a lot of shortcomings. He's a little bit crazy in the head. He can be quite selfish on occasion. But he is incredibly loyal, and on some occasions he's not selfish. He's the kind of guy who will give me a lift in a lot of different situations, and I respect that. He'll come and pick me up. He'll enjoy it even. He'll like picking me up. His shortcomings are made up for by his positive character traits, and he has some of those as well. Okay, if you are up to something, you're maybe doing something a little bit naughty, and we often use this with kids. What are the kids up to upstairs? But please remember that I use this phrase in every class at the start. I also say, what have you been up to at the weekend, or what have you been up to in the last week? And then it just means, what have you been doing? Yeah, what have you been doing? What have you been up to? So very common phrasal verb, that one, and it's well worth remembering. It has got a second meaning, which I haven't put here. To be up to something means to be capable of doing something. If you say, I'm not up to going to work today, with a gerund, yeah, I am not up to going into work today, it means I'm not well enough to go into work today. And if you are not up to the challenge, you're not ready for the challenge. If you are not up to doing this task or this exercise, you are not ready for this exercise. Your skills and your capabilities are not developed to the point where you can do that exercise. So it has that second meaning as well. Okay, to get round to means to finally find the time to do one of those tasks which has been on your list. I don't know if you've got lists of paper of tasks like I have, but it means that finally you managed to do one of those things that's been on your list, and you finally got round to doing it. So it's when you carry out some kind of duty or obligation or task which you've been meaning to do for a long time, but you haven't been able to find time to do it. You haven't been able to fit it in your busy schedule, to pack it in your schedule. You haven't found time to, but eventually you do, and you get round to doing it. Yeah, perhaps you've been putting it off for a long time, delaying it, postponing it, but then eventually you get round to doing it. Next one, creases. Creases are what we say for all of these parts in clothes, when there's a line in clothes. So usually you talk about creases on a shirt. If you wear a business suit every day, you'll get creases in your shirt, and you need to iron out the creases. So remember, iron out as well. You iron out creases, but you can also iron out the details in a contract. And when you iron out the details in a contract, it means that you make them clear for everybody, for all parties. To iron out the details. No, in fact, let me rephrase that, because that would be more like hammer out. To hammer out a contract means to get all the details very, very clear, so that all of the parties involved in the contract understand their obligations. That would be to hammer out a contract. And let me just to arrive at an agreement or solution after a lot of argument or discussion. So you could even say we hammered out the details of the contract in the meeting. Yeah, we hammered out the terms and conditions in the meeting. We could use that for hammer out. But iron out is normally when you remove problems or find solutions. So it does become quite close to hammer out, because you're finding solutions when you hammer out the terms and conditions. You're finding points of agreement. That's what you're doing when you're hammering out the terms and conditions. You're finding those points of agreement and getting them down, putting them down, writing them down on the contract. But when you iron out difficulties, it means that you're getting rid of those difficulties. So maybe, well, the two examples I've got here from Cambridge are, we're still trying to iron out some problems with the latest computer system. So the new computer system has got some glitches, it's got some problems, and you're trying to iron out those glitches, those problems. It's important to update your phone regularly, because if you don't, then the software manufacturer, Apple or whoever, they aren't able to iron out the problems and glitches which regularly come up in their software. And so it's important that you iron out these problems. But you can also iron out your differences. If you're having an argument with someone, you can iron out your differences by having some kind of meeting where you make up with them. Yeah, if you make up with someone, you iron out all of the problems that existed between the two of you. So to iron out is a very good phrasal verb, and it means to get rid of difficulties or to get rid of problems. It's also similar to smooth over. If you smooth over the difficulties, or if people, let's quickly look in Cambridge again for smooth over. To make problems, difficulties or disagreements less serious or easier to solve, usually by talking to the people involved. So my parents are trying to smooth things over between me and my girlfriend. Maybe you've been arguing with your girlfriend and your parents are trying to help you. They're trying to help you smooth things over between the two of you. Okay, the next one is dimples. Here are my dimples. Lines from age are called wrinkles. Yeah, there were my wrinkles up there. I've got a lot of lines from age, but I think that lines like wrinkles are a good thing. I like to think of them positively because they show character. I think wrinkles bring something to a face. I think if you look at someone like Vladimir Putin, it's very obvious that he's had a lot of cosmetic surgery, that he's had all of those wrinkles smoothed over. Yeah, he's had all of his wrinkles ironed out. And I think it actually makes him look effeminate. If you look at him in the old days, he looked more masculine, but nowadays he looks more effeminate since he had his wrinkles ironed out, smoothed over. I think a masculine face will always have a few lines, a few wrinkles. And dimples are not wrinkles, they're just the lines you get from smiling. Okay, to retch or to gag means to vomit, and in phrasal verb language it would be to throw up or to yak up or to barf up in American slang, but yak up is slang as well. Throw up is not slang. And they both mean to, retch and gag both mean, well, not exactly actually. I suppose retch sounds to me more like you're not actually throwing up, but you're making the noise, but maybe nothing is coming out. You're retching, but it could be throwing up. Gagging is very often used when there's a blockage in the airway, and then you gag. That would be gagging, and so normally there's something blocking the airway when you're gagging, and so. If a lady is performing some kind of oral sex on a man, she might gag because there's something blocking the airway. Yeah, and in that sense, gagging is slightly different from throw up or retch or yak up. Okay, iron out or smooth over, we've done those. It's when you remove problems or difficulties in some kind of argument, but it can also mean to iron out creases. It can mean the literal sense. To resort to means to fall back on something. There's no need to resort to violence. There's no need to fall back on violence. And when you fall back on something, you use it as a last resort. So to resort to and to fall back on are very, very similar. You might turn to someone for advice, and then you are resorting to them. But turn to is a little bit similar, but still different. You turn to someone when you need advice, but you resort to something, or you resort to something. You resort to violence if there's no other option. You fall back on violence. But fall back on, I think, is very often used for when you have nothing else available, and so you fall back on your last resort. So it's even resort to and fall back on are slightly different. Okay, if you clutch at or grasp at straws, you're trying literally anything that's available, and you're using that in order to survive. The image that I want you to remember is a man drowning in the river, and he's trying to clutch at anything, even bits of grass, which will help him to pull himself out of the river. And that's why we say clutching at straws, because we're saying he'll clutch at anything, not even thin little blades of grass, because he's drowning, he's going under, and he's just trying to clutch at anything. So if somebody is giving a very weak explanation because they can't find any other explanation for it, scientists have to do this sometimes. They get some really shocking or astonishing results. Let's say something which proves that the star is travelling at 4 times the speed of light, and the speed of light is supposed to be a limit. You can't go faster than the speed of light. So they clutch at straws. They try any explanation to try to resolve this problem, to try to iron out the difficulties they are having with explaining the velocity of this particular star. And I think this quite often happens in science. I think scientists do have to clutch at straws when they have no explanation for some kind of new phenomena or empirical data which seems to go against everything that already exists in science as a theory or as established knowledge. If things seem to go against established knowledge, like something travelling at a velocity which is faster than light, scientists tend to clutch at straws. Okay, I think we'll stop there then for today. We'll start on ring something out or drag something out on lesson feedback 13 for next time. We'll keep going at this pace because I think this is a nice pace to go at, not too fast. And you can see that there are so many words here that are cropping up each class. Some of them are repeated, but repetition is good. Repetition is how we learn. Anyway, thanks for watching, Otto. I'll see you next week, not this week because you've cancelled the class this week, but I will make another video for next week and we'll go through some more feedbacks then. So have a great day, whatever you're up to, and see you soon.